How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Touche Football Podcast on YouTube. Excited to get into this one. I think we've been looking forward to doing this one for since we started doing this. Right? I mean, first we had introducing the podcast, and then we had kind of getting everybody caught up to speed on the game. But now we're getting into the meat and potatoes of why we're doing this. I'm excited. How you doing, Colin?
I'm good. How are you? Looking forward to this
I'm doing
episode.
great. Yeah. So let's not belabor the point at all. Let's just hop right into this. It's going to be an exciting season. We're right around the corner from it. We're going to be hopping into previews and then in the upcoming episodes. But I think that there's a lot of thoughts I have on these teams, and I'm interested to hear what Colin's thoughts are as we get into the predictions that we have for this season. So, Colin, I'm going to hand it off to you. You'll kick it off. We'll start it from the bottom, starting with number 20, your worst team in this season's 2023-24 Premier League is
Sheffield United. And I think this is a team, last year finished second in the championship, achieved 91 points. Not a small feat, but, the quality within the squad, I just can't see them replicating the success in the Premier League, and I have them finishing last.
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. I have Sheffield United in last as well. I think only 18 million euros spent. Sold Ndiaye to Marseille, and, getting rid of your biggest player just doesn't show the ambition that I think you need to stay in the Premier League. So I have them going down as well. I actually have, and this one kind of hurt me, in 19th, I actually have Luton Town going down as well. I think it's a great story. And I'd love to be proven wrong. I think that they got some great players. I'm actually interested with, we had a good player in Chong, who was a good academy player for United, who was signed by Luton this year. But I think that the only saving grace for Luton is going to be if they can turn Kenilworth Road into, a fortress. I think it's going to be exciting to see the big teams go and play there. But honestly, I think that when you have the cheapest squad in the Premier League, it's going to be hard to stay up.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of Kenilworth Road. I think that'll have to be a big factor in terms of their success. I'll get to them when I get to them. In 19th, I have Bournemouth, and obviously this team has quality talent. They have top scoring midfielder last season in Philip Billing. I just don't see them earning safety again this year, and I think they go down into 19th.
Yeah, I don't agree with you on that one, but I mean, we'll see. This one might be a little controversial, but I have Everton going down. I think this is the year that it finally happens. The problem with Everton is that they've kind of haven't shown the ambition that I would like to see for a team with the urgency that I think they'd need to have. Everybody knew last season you come one goal away from going down, and then we hop right back into the off season. And you sell Moises Kean to Juve for 30 million. You haven't really brought in a lot of depth. I think there's probably too much reliance, putting too much pressure on players like Pickford to try and bail them out of games, and I just don't see it being enough. Unfortunately, I have them going down and playing their first season in a brand new stadium in the championship.
Yeah, I actually have them in 18th as well. And last season was scary for them. They achieved safety by just one goal, and I mean Everton was fighting to keep that nearly 70-year history of staying in the top flight alive. And obviously you touched on it. So much reliance on veteran leaders. You had Seamus Coleman in the back and Jordan Pickford in goal, and there just hasn't been enough investment in the team. I think for them to be any better than they were from last season, and if not worse. And so this year, I predict the heartbreak will await that the Everton fan base, and so I have them finishing as our best relegation team, if that's a thing.
Yeah. So just achieving safety, who do you have escaping the drop?
I have Burnley, and that's an inspiring story. Last as growing up, this is a team that I never foresaw getting relegated. However, last year, it was very dominant championship side. Won the league with 101 points, and I think they'll carry that momentum over to the Premier League. Obviously, not with as much success, but I think they'll achieve safety under their relatively new manager and former Manchester City legend in Vincent Kompany. I think he'll be crucial to them staying up, and excited to see him and Pep on match week 1. That'll be very interesting. So I have him finishing 17th and the last stay up for the 24-25 season.
Yeah, City and Burnley kicking the season off this Friday. We'll preview everything going into that one. I do agree with you with regards to Vincent Company, great manager. I'll get into them, but we both have them staying up, which is great for a newly promoted team. I have Wolverhampton Wanderers just escaping the drop here in 17th. The problem with them is I think that they had a very large exodus of players leave, and we're talking Raul Jimenez, Ruben Neves. You had Collins, who left the club as well, and the list could go on of players that have left. And then you're bringing in a player in Cunha from the Bundesliga, and you're hoping that 50 million euro investment is going to result in goals. It's a lot of pressure on one player to kind of fill that role, and I'm not necessarily sure that they've done quite enough. This team only scored 31 goals last season. So where are the goals going to come from? Yes, you've addressed it in the transfer window, which is why I think that they will achieve safety, but I just don't see it enough to kind of boost them higher up, and I think they'll be in that relegation scrap, all the way up until the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I agree with you. In some ways, I think that with the team losing a lot of players, that will be tough. But I disagree in the place where they'll be, and I'll get to them later on when I cover them. So I'll let you cover 16th because my 16th is pretty special.
Okay, I mean you already touched on them, so we won't belabor it. I have Bournemouth. They'll be a 16th place team. I think they were 15th last year. I think that they started off pretty bad. The changing from Gary O'Neill, they got a new manager in Andoni Areola. I think that he's proven last season. He took a second division team in La Liga in Rayo Vallecano and took them all the way to the semifinals of the Copa del Rey. I think it shows the level of progression, and it shows the level of commitment and vision that I think that a team needs. From what I've seen from some Bournemouth fans, I think that they've a lot of them were a little apprehensive when they let Gary O'Neill go, but I think that transition to the new manager is a caliber manager that they need to stay up, and so I know that they have some positivity around them. So I have them staying up. I know you don't, but we disagree on that front, but yeah, we'll see. It's interesting team. They finished 15th last season, so a lot of pressure on the Cherries this year.
Yeah, and I disagree. As you said, having Gary O'Neill leave, I think will be detrimental to the team. But we'll see how they do. My 16th
Mhm.
squad is Luton Town, and that's an amazing story. 9 years ago, I don't think anyone would have mentioned Luton Town and Premier League in the same sentence. Yet,
No, absolutely
here we
not.
are,
No.
and I don't think the story ends here. I predict them staying up. Safety is safety, but and I think the story is very inspiring. It's been 30 years away from top flight football for them, but I have them staying up. Signing such as Brian Giles from Wolves, Marvelous Nakamba from Aston Villa. He had loan transfer from Manchester City and Issa Kabore. And I think they'll all look to make a big difference on this team, and I think they'll be able to achieve safety finishing in 16th.
Yeah, I think Luton's a great story. Like I said earlier, I'd love to be proven wrong. So we'll see what happens. You have them staying up, I have them going down. So one of us will be wrong, and we'll see. Maybe we'll cut to the consequences of what'll happen if with these predictions when they're hideously wrong at the end of the season. In next, I have Burnley. I have them finishing 15th. Like we already mentioned, I think Vincent Company is a big pull to that club. I know they brought in James Trafford. A lot of money they spent on a goalkeeper that I believe was playing in League Two last season. So, and then they signed Zeki Amdouni, which is going to be an attacking center forward, a Swiss international player, and Jordan Beyer. I think bringing him in as a center back to help kind of shore up the defense. Burnley's a team that they scored a lot of points in the championship last season. They probably going to have to transition the style of play from what we remember Burnley to be, which is a very defensive and hard team to play. Now they want to play a little bit more progressive attacking style. They may be harder to put their foot down on that in the Premier League than in the Championship, but I definitely have them staying up, and I think that they will probably escape the drop pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, we both have them staying up, and I think that at really this relegation battle will be between five, six, maybe even seven teams.
Mhm.
So I mean, really the difference between 15th and 7th for us. And this is a team that had an inspiring re-entry into the Premier League last season. They were able to avoid relegation But it's a similar team to last season. I mean, obviously they made a big signing in Anthony Alanga, and we touched on him a couple weeks ago. But we'll see how he does. I just don't really see this team being that much different from last season. So I think they'll struggle at the beginning of the season to maintain avoiding relegation. But I think in the second half of the season, I think this team definitely does make a push to comfortably achieve a buffer. So I have finishing 15th.
Yeah, I think the thing for Nottingham Forest is that last season when they were promoted, I think they signed 13 players. And so they didn't have the time to integrate those players into the squad, I think, before the season started. And we kind of saw the repercussions of that, is that I don't think they were able to really get off to the start they wanted to. We're
Mm-hmm.
kind of hanging around the bottom for a while. They have a preseason this year. So, I mean, I'll cover them in a little bit more depth. But yeah, I see them outperforming last season as well. I have Fulham. I have them finishing in 14th. And I think that the thing for Fulham is that, the big question is going to be, is Mitrovic going to stay? Is he going to go to Saudi Arabia? That's the big question. We're looking at the oldest squad in the league. So, do they have the legs to be able to, to progress? And I think that I see them slipping up this year. Even if they do get Mitrovic, are they going to be able to get the version of him that maybe they had last season? And I think they need some injection of energy into that team. I know they're interested in Fred from Man United. So maybe bringing in a player like that. I think we saw Fabrizio Romano. I think he tweeted yesterday that Fred will definitely move. The question is where he'll go. And if it's Fulham, that could be a big boost for them. But as of right now, I have them slipping down into the bottom half.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I mean, I'll get to them when I get to them. I'm like pretty close, so I'll get to them soon. My 14th team is Crystal Palace. This is a team that's been decent over the last few seasons. Usually they finish around the middle of the table. But I think Wilfred Zaha leaving the club is going to be a massive blow to their 23-24 campaign.
Yeah, absolutely.
They
Yep.
do have veterans in Jordan Ayew and Nathaniel Klein. I think this team definitely does bounce back after this season, but I think that this year will have to be invested in rebuilding, and I think they'll take a minor setback. So I have them finishing 14th.
Yeah, I think for Crystal Palace, it's gonna be what they do without Zaha, and I think you already touched on it. I'll get into why I think that they'll probably outperform what you have, but either way, that's gonna be the big question for them. You already mentioned them, Nottingham Forest. I have them finishing in 13th. I think the thing for Nottingham Forest is, like we said, how they inject some of the new players they have to a team that was able to stay up last year. I think Alenga from Man United. It's a player that we would have liked to have a little bit more game time. He's a good player. Maybe wasn't made for the spotlight of Old Trafford, but I think that playing at a team like Nottingham Forest and getting a lot of game time and minutes, he could do wonders for them. They brought in Chris Wood for Newcastle, and I think they have Ola Anya from Chelsea's academy. That's another player that they brought in. So good players they brought in from big clubs that maybe give them minutes and see how they progress. I have them doing well, and I think that having the opportunity to have that preseason is really going to help them out as well. I'll hop right into the next one. I have West Ham finishing in 12th. I think the thing with them is, we don't have Declan Rice anymore. And yes, they got 105 million for him. What are they going to do with that money? We have yet to see that. They could make some investment before the end of the window. I know they're interested in Harry Maguire. They're interested in Scott McTominay and some other players from across the league. So maybe they're looking at how they spend that money. I know for me, I'd be personally ecstatic if they took Harry Maguire. That would be just, I think, a fantastic A+ signing for them, and I know I would be all supportive of it. But either way, I would say that for West Ham, what they do, I think they're going to have the Europa League distraction, which is going to be even more demanding than the Conference League distraction was last season. I think David Morris is a good manager, but I don't think he's a top half manager, and so I have them slipping a little bit and staying in that bottom half.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a team that does have potential, but it's just I have them not doing as well as they did last year as well. I mean, obviously they had that European triumph in the Europa Conference League. But I'll get to them when I get to them. I think my 12th place will absolutely baffle you, but before that, I'll get to my 13th place. I had Fulham finishing in 13th, and I know that we had touched on them before. This is a team that's been mediocre as far as things go in the Premier League. Last year they put forth a very respectable 10th place finish, and I think the big thing. I mean, you covered it, and it's just Mitrovic. We'll see if he stays, whether he leaves. But I think even if he does stay, I think the problem is that he's going to be a demotivated version of himself. And obviously they have
Mhm.
Willian as well, but he's a very good player, but it's just he's aging, and I think that it'll be difficult for them to replicate the same form that they had last season. So I don't have them plummeting. I don't have them going into relegation, but I think 13th is where I have them for now. My 12th place was Tottenham, and we saw
Oh,
Tottenham
wow.
experience a setback last year. I just think this season will be catastrophic for them. Obviously this prediction is based on the premise that Harry Kane leaves the club, which is likely to happen, but it might not. And should it not, I think they're pushing off a replica of this year's Chelsea campaign by another year in exchange for, 85 to 100 million pounds. And I think this catastrophic season is destined to happen this year or next for Tottenham to rebuild, in my opinion. Having an appreciation for a club that was struggling in Chelsea and having them finish 12th last year. I hope Tottenham can figure it out. I really do. But for now, I have them finishing in the 12th place spot.
Yeah, wow, wow, wow. I gotta say, apologies to any Tottenham fans that are listening right now. I'm sure that you've just absolutely enraged them. They were waiting to get to the end of the show before we mention their name, but you have them all the way down here in 12th. So maybe trying to just shove some of that agony you had last season on them. I don't know. I don't have them finishing down there. I'll tell you
Yeah,
why, but either way, for my next team, in 11th, I have Brentford. I think a team that absolutely performed probably above expectations last season. They had some great attacking players, and I think part of the reason why I have a little bit of a slip for them is, I mean, they're not going to have Ivan Toney until January, so they're going to have to navigate, those waters. What's going to happen with David Raya? Is he going to be going to Arsenal? That's something that we have, yet to see. They have brought in some players. We already talked about Collins, how he left Wolves, and then they've brought in Kevin Schade from the Bundesliga. So is that going to be a player that that can maybe replicate some of the attacking threat that they have? They do have some good attacking players on that team. They're one of the best transition teams in the world, or at least in the league last season. So I think that they absolutely have the talent that they need to compete, especially with the big clubs. But I just don't have it happening for them with not having Tony around. So I have them finishing in 11th.
yeah. I think you made some good points there. I mean, I'll get to them. I'll get to them soon. My 11th place was West Ham, and this is the last team I have in the bottom half of the table. I think they'll experience some setback. Obviously we touched on the fact that with the whole Europa Conference League, and how that was a big triumph for them. But I think it will be distracting having to play in the Europa League and just a lot of unneeded matches. Really, I think it'll be hard for them to play with, especially losing Declan Rice. This team has well, I think we'll have a tough time maintaining form. And they do have quality players. They have Lucas Paqueta, Mikel Antonio, and they have former Chelsea players in Emerson and Kurt Zuma. I just don't think that form will be able to be maintained the whole season. And so I foresee them dipping into an 11th place finish.
Yeah, I think that we have them kind of around the same
I'll tell you
spot. I
my
think we're
10th
splitting
place
hairs.
team.
Well, I mean, it better be Wolves because I mean I've been going down the checklist and you haven't mentioned
I'll
them. So
tell you my
hopefully,
10th place team, and I well, that it is. And they've been a team that over the last few years, they set up camp around the middle of the table, maybe lower middle half of the table. So I mean, this year I predict will be a little bit better. Obviously they are a big question mark. They have players like Pedro Neto, Wang Chan up front. They made a winter signing in João Gomez. And I think this new signing, Mateus Cunha, I think will do better than I think you think he will. I think
hmm.
it is a lot of pressure for one player, but I think he'll thrive under the spotlight. And I think he's huge if this prediction is to work. So they have consistent defender in the back and Max Kilman. So I see this team maintaining stability and finishing in 10th, which would be maybe a little bit overperforming than I think a lot of people think, but that's where I have them.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty bold prediction. We'll see. I mean, we have them at complete opposite ends of the bottom half. I think that for me, they were a relegation team. right in that relegation fight. And that's what I envision. And I hope that their season gets off to a terrible start at Old Trafford on Monday, and that relegation battle just begins from match week 1. So we'll see what happens with them. For me, a team that you mentioned a little while back, and for me, I think it's going to be either one or the other. With Crystal Palace, I have them in 10th, rounding out the bottom of the top half, and I think that yes, we're entering a period where they're not going to have Wilfred Zaha. I think the players like Eze and Elise are great players that are going to need to fill that role. They did bring in Mateus Franca from Brazil, young 19-year-old Brazilian international. So I think that they have some enthusiasm around what maybe he can bring as they try and fill that role. But for me, it's really going to be Roy Hodgson. I think he's a good manager. I think that he's a stable manager, and I see them as a mid-table team, and not necessarily dipping into that lower portion of the table.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. And they're not too far fetched like our predictions from 14th to 10th. I think it is just a question mark of how they'll fare without Wilfred Zaha. For me, moving into ninth, I have Brighton, and last year was the first time that they'll now be participating in Europe. That's the first time in their history. So it's an inspiring team to watch. But this year they lost their star midfielder in Alexis McAllister, and potential that they lose Moises Caicedo. I'm hoping they lose Moises Caicedo. That would really help Chelsea. So we'll see what happens, and I think that regardless of if they lose him, I think losing McAllister in and of itself will be um, a blow for them. And I think that uh, with a depleted midfield, I just can't foresee them going and having as much success domestically this time around. So while I don't predict they're going to fall apart, I think they'll definitely have a minor setback and barely managing a top half finish in ninth.
Yeah, I think that we see the same. Brighton is an exciting team. I have them in ninth as well. I think the thing is, it's going to be hard. I know some people, they've made some great signings. I think that João Pedro is a great signing. I think bringing in a player like James Milner is going to provide some veteran leadership that they might need, especially if they do have some losses in the midfield. But for this, I think Europa's league is going to be a big distraction for them, and I don't know if they necessarily have the squad to be able to compete in the league and in the Europa League at the same time. So I think that ninth is probably a good spot for them. They have some very exciting players. I think with Matoma and Enciso, those are great players that performed very well last season. So maybe they make that next progressive step, and they're going to need that if they want to fight with the big clubs in the top half. You already mentioned them already. You mentioned them way down there in 12th, but I have Tottenham finishing in 8th place. Honestly, I'm a lot higher on Tottenham than you are. I think it's really going to boil down to if Harry Kane stays or not. I know they've had the conversations with Bayern and what that's going to look like, but I think it's really going to be how their new manager Ange really gels this team together. They do have good players. We're talking about Son. I think Richarlison is basically like a new signing. If Harry Kane stays, that's going to be massive. They've got James Madison, who they brought in from Leicester City. So the talent's there. It's just going to be how they can perform. And obviously, they're not going to have any European distractions. So I think that they can primarily focus on the league. And I think they have a team that has players that's with their focus only be on domestic ambition. I think they have a team that can probably outperform where you have them, which is just floundering down there in 12th.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. Obviously, we disagree on that, but it is a question mark, and obviously, still have to see whether or not Kane leaves or stays. So that's huge for me. In eighth, I have Brentford, and I know that you touched on him. I think in 11th. So this is a team I think over the last two seasons, they've really shown the world the beauty of football, and it's been an inspiring example of the promotion system in action. This team hasn't just battled relegation; they've become a top half Premier League team, and I think this year will be no different. This summer they've spent over 50 million landing players like Nathan Collins from Wolves to revamp their back line, along with Kevin Shade from was it Leverkusen, I think, to add to an already strong attack in Ivan Toney. I mean, obviously he won't play for the until January, which I think will be a huge blow. But I think that his contribution will be huge. Kevin Shade to see how well they do this year. Last season they also had Brian Mbumu, and he scored 9 goals along with 8 assists last year, and he was huge to Brentford's success. So I think he'll have
Mhm.
to replicate a similar season. So I mean, it'll be exciting to see how they stack up with this season. I predict they'll be in the top half again, finishing in 8th.
All right. So we're kind of getting to the juicy part of the table. I'm gonna make a little bit of a prediction here, or maybe not a prediction, but a little more of an assertion. But before I do that, we are sitting at 99 subscribers. So if you're watching this video and you've made it this far and you have not pressed that subscribe button, please help us out and click the subscribe button to get us to 100. It would mean a lot. It would mean an absolute lot for us to get to 100. So I'm going to throw that. Please like the video. It takes 2 seconds. Just take a moment, like the video. It helps us a lot with the YouTube algorithm. All right. Now that that's out of the way, I want to say I think the team that's had the best transfer window so far has been Aston Villa. Aston Villa has had the best summer transfer window so far. I think Moussa Diaby from Leverkusen, that's a great signing. Bringing in Tillemans from Leicester City on a free, that's excellent business. And then Pau Torres, I think that he was a very exciting player, especially when Villarreal won the Europa League just a few years ago. And I think that bringing all those players under a manager like Unai Emery, we saw last season Villa got off to a horrible start, relegation level start, sacked Steven Gerrard as the manager, brought in Unai Emery, and this team finished in a European place, which is an outstanding achievement. So I would say if Emery cannot have that slow start, if they can get off to a strong start, this is a team that can absolutely compete in European places and has the talent and depth to be able to compete domestically as well.
Yeah, I actually have him in 7th as well, and I think many people would find this prediction too high. I just think, as you said, I think they've had an insane transfer window, and obviously they already do have players in a World Cup winner in goal and Emiliano Martinez, and talented players in Coutinho, Ali Watkins, now Paul Torres, and they also have the Leicester signing in Yuri Tillmans, as you mentioned. So I see this team finishing 7th, and that's an improvement from their season last year. So see what happens. I'm excited to see how they can do this year. My 6th place is moving into the top 6 spots. I don't know where you have them, but I have Newcastle in 6th, and this is the team that surprised all of us last year. I think this team
Mm.
has tons of potential with new ownership. Manager Eddie Howe, I think they've become a team that even last episode we had to cover in depth because they have become one of those top big 6 teams. Maybe not big 6, but you said big 7. And I think
Mhm.
that we see both see this team as a highly respectable team and with the potential to reach even greater heights. Last year, we saw players like Miguel Almiron and Alexander Isak have breakout seasons. And
Yeah.
obviously they've revamped their midfield with huge Milan signings, Sandro Tonali, and they have a veteran leader in their defense in Kieran Trippier. And I think how now having to play in the Champions League, I think might hurt them because then now they have bigger matches that they have to play, and I just don't think they have the squad depth to pull off a top 4 finish and having to balance the Champions League on top of that. So I have them finishing in 6th, and that's where I have them.
Yeah, we see eye to eye again on this one. It's kind of becoming a trend, which is a bit scary. But I think that Newcastle's a team that I will say, even as a United fan, I think Newcastle and United kind of benefited from teams like Liverpool, Chelsea, not necessarily having the best seasons, even Tottenham, and so they were able to sneak into that top 4. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but I think that was that helped them get there. I think they have a great
Right.
team. I think they've brought in some great players. You already mentioned Tonali from AC Milan. I think bringing in Harvey Barnes from Leicester is another good signing for them. So I do think they'll have the talent to be able to compete. It's going to be interesting how they do in the Champions League, but I think that maybe trying to balance the Champions League and compete domestically in the league and get top 4 again, maybe a stretch too far from them, especially if those teams like Chelsea and Liverpool take a step up, which they will, according to both of us, because we haven't mentioned either one of them yet.
Well, going to that, I have Chelsea in 5th, and this is a team, as you guys should all know, has been is my team. I've been a fan of them since early childhood, and last season was not pretty. Going through 3 different managers in a 1 season span was brutal, and forced new ownership led to many problems. I'm not going to belabor the point. Got to move on from that. But this season we have a new manager in Mauricio Pochettino, and we've already made a lot of young signings, which now have become accustomed to the Premier League. Mikhailo Mudryk, Christopher Nkunku, Madueke, Christopher Jackson, even really Lewis Hall. And, we saw
Mhm.
him last season, the last 4 games of the year when we didn't really have anything to play for, really emerge as promising. And I think all these players together combined will put the ball in the back of the net more than 38 times. I think last year we just finished with the 1 goal a game, and that just wasn't cutting it. So I think this is a dangerous team that rebuilding after a dreadful campaign last year. I don't think they'll disappoint this year. And while maybe not a top 4 finish, I think they'll make a good push. I just don't think they'll be enough this year. But certainly in years to come, I'm excited to see where they go. So I have them finishing fifth.
Yeah, I think that for them, it's really about Pochettino. That's the manager was a big conversation last year. Obviously, you had 3 managers last season, so the hope is you can make it through a whole season with one manager, and then you had a mass exodus of players. Players like Mason Mount has left, Kovacic, Kai Havertz have
Mhm.
gone to some other top 6 rivals. You've also had a lot of players leave for Saudi Arabia. But I also think that they're very young. It's
Mhm.
the youngest squad in the league. They're very exciting. I think they've had a great preseason. You got players like Nico Jackson and Cuckoo who you've brought in. Those are going to be real cogs on how well this team performs. The other thing is you got no European distractions, so you can primarily focus on the league, and I think that's going to help them. I think trying to juggle all of that last season with all the managerial changes and styles of play, I think it was going to be hard for them to achieve, and I think things kind of just fell apart at the end. But yeah, I have Chelsea in 5th place as well, and we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting this season if we look at the Champions League and how we move into the reformatted Champions League. Whether or not 5th place is going to be good enough to qualify for a Champions League spot, we'll have to see. But the teams that we know for a fact will finish in the Champions League, moving into that elusive top 4. Who do you have finishing in that first Champions League spot?
I have Arsenal, and I mean it was fun last year reveling in their bottling of the league. But I mean, being realistic, there's extreme talent within that club. They have players like Saka, Martinelli, Gabriel Jesus, Trossard, Odegaard, and now Declan Rice. This is a team to watch. Last
Mhm.
season certainly wasn't a fluke, and I just don't see them replicating such success this season. With that said, though, they're a talented young squad, a lot of potential for many years to come. I just there's got to be gelling that occurs within that team, and it just hasn't happened. I mean, we saw it in the summer, and those players the huge signings that they've made, are not playing at their price tag. And I think that until they do, until this team gels, I just don't see them uh, being as much of a force as they were last season.
Yeah, I guess we're gonna call this the Fantastic Four, which is the 4 teams in a row that we've picked in the exact same spot. So for whatever reason, I have Arsenal finishing in 4th as well. I think that we got big players that they've shown a lot of ambition. They've gone out and spent the money, splashed the cash. It's a prove it year for them and for a lot of their players. You spend 105 million on Declan Rice, you need to see results. And they spent pretty decent money on bringing in Kai Havertz, and interested to see where he plays. Is he going to be up front? Is he going to be kind of dropped in the midfield? I think that Timber is a good player that can play on the back. He can play in every defensive position. But the question is for me, if I'm saying how are they going to compete against those top teams in the league, and obviously last year that was going to be Manchester City. I don't know if I can say that I think Gabriel Jesus is going to be a player that can compete with the likes of Erling Haaland. And yeah, they have some great players. I think the Odegaard is a fantastic player. I think Saliba is a great player, and I think they're absolutely. This isn't a last year wasn't a fluke. It's just going to be a question on whether or not they can build on that. And I think that maybe the improvements of some other teams around them is going to have them, maybe not finish quite so high in the table. But I could absolutely be proven wrong. Maybe this could potentially be Arsenal's year. And I think that these top 4 teams, at least for me personally, I think are ones that you could interchange just based on form. So hopping above Arsenal, I have a team from Manchester, Manchester United. I have them finishing in 3rd place. I think last season was a season that we, again, like I said, maybe benefited a bit from having, teams around us underperform. But I think that 3rd place was earned, but there was a very large gap. I don't think we were really ever a serious contender for the title. There was a period where we got close, but we kind of dropped off, especially as we progressed in these other tournaments like the FA Cup and the Europa League. For me, big questions around Mason Mount, how he plays and what role he plays. That's going to be key. I think there's a lot of pressure on him as we kind of transition into becoming a high pressing side. I think a player like Rasmus Højlund is going to be a big plus, especially in that pressing game. He's a high energy, young, strong, physical center forward. Man United has needed a number 9 for a long time. They've got one, but the question is how good can he perform, as he's still considered very raw by a lot of pundits and scouts. And then obviously from the back, I think we look at a player like Andre Onana replacing David De Gea with 12 years of service at the club. I think that Onana is a great goalkeeper who's going to completely revolutionize the way we play out from the back, add a lot of, take a lot of pressure off of those defenders. And I think that, we did have the best defense in the league, most clean sheets in the league last season. That may not be replicated this year, as I think that when you play from the back, you leave yourself susceptible to making some more mistakes. But at the same time, I think that this will be an improved team. I just don't know if they've made the leap quite enough to really be competing in that title conversation.
Well, I'd agree with most of what you said, and the team I have next that I'm going to that I have in third will prove my opinion on Manchester United. So in third, I actually have the other Manchester team, Manchester City. And for those having a heart attack that I didn't put them in the top two, relax. I'm not a denialist. I just see their success being contested a lot more this year, and I can't see them taking the late season success. I just can't see them taking that success that they had last year into this year. I think it'll be a lot more contested. Winning the treble and then just go win the league again. Without star midfielder Ilkay Gundogan will be very difficult. And I think Kovacic, as a Chelsea fan saying this, I don't foresee him being able to fill those shoes. Beyond that, City have already reached the top. They can't go any higher. They can only go down from here. Won't be as motivated this time around. Also, this is a Premier League, not Liga 1 that we're talking about, and I just can't see City pulling off 4 in a row. With that said, I respect what they've built here, and this is a season I predict that they'll still be fun to watch. With the players, Haaland, Silva, Foden, Jack Grealish, Kevin De Bruyne, putting on a show for us as they always do. However, all good things eventually come to an end, and I think this is no different. Whether it's when Pep most likely leaves in the future or now, sooner or later, while they'll still have success, I don't think it'll be with the dominance that they've had over the last 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I think complacency is always going to be a problem when you've got a team, and I think it's been so hard for teams to win 3 in a row. I think winning 4 in a row is a tall task. And I'm not going to sit here and say that it's a guarantee by any stretch. I think the other teams are going to press them. But one thing I have noticed is that I think we both have Liverpool, performing much better than last season. So I'm going to hop right into it. I have Liverpool finishing in second in the league. I think that for them, they've got arguably one of the best managers in the league in Jurgen Klopp. I think that they've got some players that have left in the previous few seasons. Sadio Mane left 2 years ago. You've got Roberto Firmino has left. And so, players like Mo Salah, how he's going to play with, Cody Gakpo and Darwin Nunez and Luis Diaz. And these are players that across that front line, they're going to need, that same level of commitment and consistency with the high press that they play. I don't necessarily know if Darwin Nunez is a 20-goal striker, but he could be. And if he's going to be, he's going to need to be if Liverpool are going to compete for a title. They have had a very big shift in their midfield with Alexis McAllister coming in and Szoboszlai. I think that's a great signing for them. I think the real question is going to be if Trent Alexander-Arnold is going to play more midfield. I think, Klopp is keeping us guessing a bit on what he's going to do. And usually whenever he has, other coaches guessing, that's bad news for them and good news for Liverpool. So I have them finishing in second in the league.
Yeah, and I'd agree. I think both of us have them overperforming certainly from last season. And I'll get to them in a minute. But number 2, I have Manchester United, and this is a team like you've touched on. This is a team that's building on potential that we saw last season. The likes of Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount now, Anthony, huge contribution in the press, and now having Rasmus Højlund up front as that number 9 surrounded at the attack. I see them scoring a lot more goals than they did last year. Obviously, United led the league last year in shutouts, as you mentioned, and I think that helped them carry to a third place finish. But this year, having revamped their attack, I think it'll culminate in fans, seeing a United team, and I think it'll result in second place finish.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be making outlandish predictions, I mean, you could have at least had United winning the league. I mean, that would have been great. I've been a big fan. I would have been rooting for you to be right all year. But either way, I think that obviously to prove your point, you had already kind of mentioned them. I have Man City winning 4 in a row, and the reason why is I think they have the best manager in the world. I think they have the best attack in the world, and I think they have the best midfield in the world. And they've done a lot with the signings of Guardiola and Kovacic to kind of enforce the fact that I think they're building one of the best defenses in the world. So how will they go from here? They're the team to beat, and until somebody beats them, I'm going to say they're going to do it again. I've just been watching them just pound this league into submission for the last 3 years, and I just see that continuing this season. I could be wrong, but we'll find out. Hopefully, I know you were breaking up a little bit on that last one, so hopefully the signal is coming through a little bit better. But yeah, I'm pretty shocked that you've if you've already mentioned United, that you have Liverpool winning the league. That's a pretty big cry. So I'll open the floor to you to defend your prediction here.
So, I mean, this is obviously, the hardest pick to make of all. Call me a Manchester City hater, someone who lies to himself, a nihilist. I just can't see Manchester City making it 4 years in a row. I mean, I've already touched on him, so I'm here to talk about Liverpool. Liverpool had a rough season this year. This is the first time since 2016 that they're not going to reach those NBA top 4 spots. And while many see this as maybe a step back, I foresee this team really bouncing back, especially with one of the best managers in the world in Jurgen Klopp. And I think both of us would agree that one of his biggest strengths is motivating his players. And I think he'll be crucial in getting this team to bounce back from this year's adversity. I mean, you might ask, first place, that's a lot. And my answer is yes. And this is a team with attackers such as Darwin Nunez, now has his feet wet in the Premier League. Cody Gakpo. I think he'll definitely do better than he did last season. Mohamed Salah, I think he's always going to be a pivotal part of Liverpool's squad if they want to make a push for this number 1 spot. And it's an extremely talented team. Now they've made Virgil van Dijk captain. I think that's a wise move, a quality center back who leads by example. And if Liverpool's midfield is to perform to standard of them by Klopp, I really do see them winning the league. I think a lot depends on, as you mentioned, how Trent will do. If that's something that they want to, if they're going to put him in the midfield, it's keeping us guessing. So I think there's a lot of questions with that midfield. I think the midfield will determine their spot, and I think that I'm predicting that their midfield will do very, very well. You already mentioned Zobazli. It's hard to say his name. But
I don't even think Liverpool fans can say his name,
crucial.
So I think you're all right.
I think he'll be crucial, and I think that Alexis McAllister will be crucial for them if they really want to push for the title. So I'm excited to see what they can do. Obviously, I don't really want them to win the league, but this is what I have. This is what I predict. So.
And there you have it. We rounded out. That's going to bring us all the way up to number 1, the title. And we've got different champions, so that'll make things more exciting for the end. But that rounds it out on our Premier League predictions and what we think. I'm sure that come the spring, we're going to look back at this and just rip it apart, because it's gonna be rough. It's fun doing this. It's fun doing it. I look forward to that point of the season. I look forward to the season itself. We are kicking the season off this week, Friday. So we're gonna have another episode this week. I think that we're gonna get into everything that we think is going to happen in the upcoming week. So we're going to have another episode that's going to come out this week. So a 2 episodes this week. So stay tuned for that. And last but not least, I want to kind of get your thoughts on some of the other, the things that are happening around the league, or even the Champions League. So, just to cover as we kind of close things out here, do you have any thoughts on? Do we both have Erling Haaland winning the Golden Boot, or you have somebody else in mind that you think could? You don't have Erling Haaland win Golden Boot.
I don't.
Oh, okay. Well,
I
I
don't.
do. So,
And I
you've
think
been a little more bold than me. So let's see.
I know you're gonna be surprised at this. I have Marcus Rashford um, getting
Oh,
Golden Boot.
wow.
And
Okay. So,
I think that last year we saw, I think really in the second half of the season. Um,
yeah. Why did we even go get
I
Rasmus
mean, last
Højlund? We
season we
should.
saw how he was scoring. I mean, it was like, I mean, yeah, I mean, I see your point. I think that he's last year he's scoring like goals every week, and so I think at the second half of the season after the World Cup, I think his World Cup form really did transition um, into the second half of the season. But I think that should he be able to put that into a whole year of form, I think he'll be able to. I mean, I think it is a very far stretch, but I think it's possible that early not Erling Haaland, Marcus Rashford gets this golden boot.
I mean, I'd be over the
I can
moon.
tell you're
I'd be absolutely over
shocked.
them. I'd be doing cartwheels down the streets here in Chicago if Marcus Rashford is the top goal scorer in the league. But yeah, we'll see. I think that I don't know what our punishments are going to be if for these that are wrong. I kind of flirted in the idea of eating some hot wings for everything that was horribly wrong. I think that you signed yourself up for some, a whole bowl of hot wings with some of the things that you've got coming. So that'll be exciting. And then
We'll see.
last but
We'll
not
see.
least, what are your thoughts on the Champions League? You have a team that you think could compete to win it this year. I don't have Man City winning that one,
As
so
much as I
we'll see.
hate, I don't know, and I think that as I think they'll do well. I think City will do well. I don't think they'll win. I think they'll do well though. I think that as much as I hate to say this, I know a lot of people who I talk to this game about. I know that I do not like this team, but I think Real Madrid will do it. I think they'll pull it off. I think that the signings they've made, especially with Jude Bellingham in the midfield, I think will really transform that team. And I think that they're already a Champions League contender every single season. So I think that they'll do it again.
Well, I spent the last 47 minutes calling you crazy, but we're going to end on the same note, and I have Real Madrid picking up another Champions League final at the end here. I think that especially, I don't know if Mbappe is going to come across the line, but this is a team that never seems to go away in the Champions League. It's their competition. I think they were a little bit humbled with their knockout to Man City last season, so they invested,
Mm.
and I think that they're going to be ready to kick back on all cylinders. And I see them being a force to be reckoned with in the Champions League this year. And that wraps us up. That's our predictions for this for this Premier League season. Again, like I said, look out for that another episode that's going to be coming out probably on Thursday as we preview the season and match week 1, which is going to be taking place this weekend. Feels good to have the Premier League back. It's the best time of year. It's my favorite time of year, and we're going to be very excited to get into this on a weekly basis and covering these matches in depth. Colin, you have anything else you want to add before we close it out?
No, that's it. It was fun hearing your predictions. I think yours were, as you said, not as bold as mine, but we'll see how it all plays out. And maybe at the end of the year, I'll be eating a bowl of hot wings. So
Yeah,
see
it's
how
gonna
it
be
goes.
fun. It's gonna be fun. All right, I'm very excited to get into this Premier League season. It's gonna be a blast. I love it, and I love doing it. And I'm gonna be really excited to do this over these podcasts and this YouTube channel for this year. So that wraps us up here on this end. Again, if you haven't clicked the subscribe button and you stayed all the way to the end, please click that subscribe button. Please click the like on this video. It helps us out a ton. And yeah, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, we owe you a soda. Have a good one. We'll see you in the next one.